Welcome to Under the Microscope. This series is brought to you by the Real Scientists Nano team. Our goal is to provide a platform where scientists can communicate their work and interact with the public. With that in mind, every week we introduce you to a scientist working in the field of materials and nanoscience, who would be curating the RealSci_Nano Twitter account.
Hi everyone. Today we have with us Niklas Friedrich, who is a PhD student at a research institute in Spain called Nanographene. Hi Niklas, how are you?
Hi. Yeah, very good. How are you?
I'm good. Excited to take a deeper dive into your science and your scientific journey and everything that comes with being a scientist. So let's start by understanding your career so far. So tell us about your scientific career so far.
Yes, so my scientific background is I started studying physics, the bachelor in Aachen in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And there I also did my master, but during the master, I also spent 1 year in Santiago de Chile studying there. And I used that to get a little bit a broader picture of everything, because in Aachen I was very much focused on solid state physics, and it was much more theoretical than in Chile. And in Chile it was a little bit more applied, but I also had, for example, a course on epistemology, which was very exciting. And then finishing my master, I had the great luck of having a recommendation of one course in surface science from a friend of mine. And she was very impressed by the prof, and therefore I just took this course because I trusted her a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, this was a super interesting and exciting topic. And I ended up doing my master thesis, which is 1 year in that group. It was in the Forschungszentrum Jülich in the group of Stefan Tautz.
Mm-hmm.
And there I worked already with a scanning tunneling microscope, investigating the molecule called PTCDA and playing a little bit around there. And then for my PhD, I figured, okay, I like this technique a lot. I think it's an incredibly powerful tool. It's amazing that you can look inside a single molecule, that you can even the scanning tunneling microscope is super exciting to me because you have a small metal tip where you pass a tunneling current and you bring it in extremely close contact, so of a distance of very few atoms or one atom or even closer to the surface, and then you measure the current and keep it as a feedback loop to keep the current constant. And the current depends exponentially on the distance. So if you move it away 1 atom about, you will have only 1/10 of the current. So you can measure very, very precise. But you can not only measure because you have there this metal tip. So you have atoms around, you have matter around, and you can use it actually, for example, to pick up the single molecule and lift it and move it around. So it's not only you can look at the system, but you can actively manipulate the system. And this, to me, extremely exciting. And you have a machine, it's relatively small. It would fit basically in most living rooms. And with that, you can say, okay, I want to lift that molecule and not the one that's sitting there like 1 nanometer away from it. So this thing was very exciting to me. But on the other hand, I felt like I should go to a different place, not spend my whole life in Aachen because I also grew up there. And I started to look around. And then I got recommended here the group where I'm currently in, because we had former collaborations here. And yeah, then I wrote to the group and asked them if they have space. And I was lucky enough that they had an open position for a PhD student. So I came here and started to work on nanographenes, synthesizing all of them, and then also continuing the work with this super exciting microscope.
Okay, that's quite exciting, and you have moved around quite a bit, so that is also very, very interesting. It's quite inspiring and interesting as well. The STM, I always found STM super fascinating, and exactly what you're saying, that not just observe and characterize the material that you're investigating, but also modify it or play around with it. Just pick up one molecule from one place and put it to a different place. That is definitely fascinating. So, Nicholas, you did speak a little bit about your current research in the short podcast and right now as well. So, where does your current research fit in this big picture of materials nanoscience, which is quite a broad field?
Yes, I would say it's located a little bit on the boundaries between doing chemistry and physics, obviously, okay, surface science.
Mhm.
And well, it depends a little bit from where you take a look. I mean, that we have in our group also some chemists, we have physicists, we have material scientists. So from all of these perspectives, you can find parts that are more interesting, more exciting to you.
Mhm.
So it depends a little bit where you look at it. What's very clear to me is very fundamental research. So we are not the ones saying, okay, this is basically the last step of research before some company will take over and try to develop something that they can sell with it. But it's really about understanding nature. Um, but of course, there are potential applications, and these are in so-called organic electronics. Um,
Mhm.
because, well, the materials that we are using are organic materials. They are carbon-based, and we're doing electronics. So this is very clearly organic electronics.
Mhm.
In principle, trying to induce magnetic states into graphene nanostructures is also very promising candidates for spintronics or quantum computing.
Mhm.
But as I said, it's fundamental research. So it's first of all trying to understand what's going on and then thinking about, okay, can we maybe exploit that in an interesting way? And yeah, since we have these different components of synthesizing the structure on the surface, which is typically not possible in other ways,
Mhm.
um, combined then with characterizing their physical properties, I would say it's on the border between quantum chemistry and surface science, physics. So
Mhm.
very, very multidisciplinary. And actually, this is sometimes challenging because you come up with these beautiful structures that theoretically should have marvelous properties, and then you just spend days and weeks trying to synthesize it, and it doesn't work out, and you don't know why. And then you fiddle with a little bit parameters, and then you talk to the chemists, ask them to provide a different molecule, and yeah,
Mhm.
we sometimes just don't know why it didn't work out, and sometimes we're just lucky we put in the first shot and get marvelous results. Yeah, it's very
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah, I can imagine it is quite exciting, and it sounds to me that I mean, your current project is also very very interesting, but also you have been involved in quite a lot of interesting research projects. And this now the next question is it's a tough one. If you have to pick one research project that you're most proud of, or the most fun or quirky one, could you pick one research project and explain it to us in simple words in the section we call "In Other Words"?
Yes, um, that was was tricky
It's a toughie,
to
yeah.
pick because I think of course I'm excited by a lot of the work that I do, but if I would have to pick one, I think I would pick the one where I was the first author. So in science, it's always this kind of the metric people are evaluated on how many papers do they have as first or last author.
Mhm.
And I mean, last author, this will still take some time until I reach there. So this is my first author paper.
Mhm.
And I think it's on one hand super solid work, but also on the other hand, it's um, connecting many fields. It's also very visual. What I did there is I synthesized graphene nanoribbons that are 7 atoms wide. So really the molecules that I investigated, you can count and see that they are just, well, we know that they are 1 atom high, and then in one axis they are just 7 atoms wide. And in the other axis, they are very long. And what I did is that I lifted the molecules and passed a current through it. And actually what we found is if you replace two of the carbon atoms that build this whole nano ribbon with boron, then what happens is a so-called topological transition, which is a concept from mathematics. And basically it just means that the electrons in the valence band of the graphene nanoribbon, so in the highest band that's closest to the unoccupied states, they feel like a barrier that is induced by this boron. This happens, so there's two things going on. It basically ruptures that you can just move around freely the electrons. And on the other hand, because of this precise geometry of the ribbon, it's the two boron atoms stabilize class sextets, which is just basically that you have a hexagon ring of carbon atoms, and you have there a bond structure that can move around freely. And this is extremely stable chemically wise. The typical example is benzene, where you draw a ring inside instead of some single and double bonds. And this is basically the very same thing. And there we create an extremely high barrier for the electrons to tunnel through. So they feel like, okay, the ribbon ends here, although it continues on the other side of this barrier. And therefore, there emerges a magnetic state, and we were able to measure that. And I think it's a very exciting work because I had a lot of fun doing it in the experiment, sitting in the lab and working on it. It was very exciting. Also, it was very interesting. We had a very good dynamic with the theorist, Pedro Brandimate, who's actually co-author on that paper. He did marvelous DFT calculations and helped us to understand better what's going on there. And also what we did is to prove really that this molecule is what we claim it is. We did a little trick with our STM. We attached a CO molecule to the last atom of the tip. And with that, what we gain is we can get intramolecular resolution. So we can really see all these hexagons that chemists used to draw without actually knowing if they are real or not. It was just a nice concept, but 11 years ago, they figured out, okay, we can actually put a CO or it works also with some other molecules or atoms on the apex of an STM, and with that gain this intramolecular resolution. And the image is beautiful. Actually, it's so beautiful that the editors of PRL decided to put it on the cover. And every time I talk about it to people that want to know what I'm doing, and I can show them, look, this is how it looks like. This is how nature looks like on a really small scale. It's something beautiful to show because it's so visual and you can really see it. And that's what I like a lot about it.
That sounds amazing. I can imagine why you picked this research project that you're most proud of, because it does sound like a very interesting, scientifically sound, and also visually really appealing sort of images. And it's not just experimental. You also have the theoretical aspects who are supporting or going hand in hand, which is also, I always love it when the experimental and the theoretical work goes hand in hand, because that's like, okay, in theory, this is what we expect, this is what we're predicting, but in reality, by experimental techniques, we can also do what the theory has predicted, so to say. So that sounds really, really interesting. And I hope you will talk about this particular paper and show us that image as well when you're taking over the account. I'm sure you have the image with the PRL cover, and I'm sure if it's on the cover, it's also made more modified or something like that.
No, that's actually the exciting thing. It's really just the measurement. It was quite funny because they asked us to provide a high resolution image, and we were like, okay, well, but we only took that measurement with so many points. There's no
this is the highest resolution.
It's no calculation where you can just set up. Okay, we plotted in arbitrary resolution or so. It's
Right.
yeah.
Looking forward to seeing that particular image that you're talking about. That sounds really interesting. So, Nicholas, it's clear to me that you really like the research aspect of being a scientist, going in the lab, getting your hands dirty. Well, not literally. Um, but what else do you like about being a scientist other than the research aspect?
Well, yeah, to me, not only sitting in the lab is something incredibly exciting, but also sometimes taking the step back and thinking about, okay, what we're actually doing is we are advancing human knowledge. So many times when you sit in the lab and repeat and do stuff over and over again, you tend to forget about it. But actually what you are doing is doing something that no one in the world has ever done before on a very regular basis. And this is something that's super exciting. And another thing that I find fascinating is working together with so many curious and bright people from so many different backgrounds. Not only talking about different scientific backgrounds, but also talking about different cultural backgrounds. We have a group where people come from many different countries. So you get a lot of exchange between cultures. And okay, for me personally, I haven't experienced that, but one of the prime examples is to me this accelerator Sesame that they built in the Middle East, where people from Syria, Lebanon, Iran, Iraq, Israel, Egypt, they are all working there together. And if you take politicians from the same country, they will hardly sit in the same room. And somehow the scientists can put away all these differences they might have to say, okay, let's work on something bigger together. And okay, on a smaller scale, this happens in so many research labs that you have people from very different backgrounds coming together and just saying, okay, we care about the science, we're just curious and want to know what's going on. And that's something amazing to me that this works. Of course, it's not yet perfect. There still is a lot of bias, and for many people from different cultures, it is very, very hard to get into science. There are still a lot of problems about biases, structural racism, but I've to me it feels like it might be a little bit less than in the general society. And maybe I'm wrong about that, but it feels like.
Yeah, well, maybe I've only had good experiences. I hope you're right though. And you're absolutely right. These people, the scientists basically, they can put science first. And whenever you put science first before anything else, be it politics, be it economic, be it religious, anything at all, every time people put science first and work together from different cultures, different countries, it's just amazing. It's very fascinating, actually, that science basically brings everyone together. That's really, really nice. You're right. Excellent. So, I mean, speaking to you, I have this feeling that you do have quite a lot of experience and insights and wisdom as well. So if you were to go back in time and start your scientific career today, or what advice would you give yourself, or what advice would you give to the scientists who are starting out today?
Well, that's for me a very tough one, because actually, I mean, I haven't even finished my PhD, so I'm still very, very young, and my perspective is not so huge. I mean, I didn't have to fight with a lot of stuff that will come after the PhD. And maybe I'll find out later on that I should have done things differently, but for now, I'm very happy. And what I think makes me very happy is a combination of two things. So first of all, I'm researching something that I feel is very exciting, that I can be passionate about. And I think this helps a lot to motivate me, because research in the end is many times very hard work, very tedious work. You have to be very pedantic, repeat some things over and over again that are not working, trying to make them work. And there, if you do it with something that you don't care about, I feel like you will have a very, very hard time. So I think you should always pick something that is interesting to you. And yeah, for me, also, for example, it doesn't need to have a direct application. There are people that say like, no, I cannot do this with something that maybe in 10 years no one will care about. Maybe in 100 years it will be a great technology. We don't know yet. I want something more applied. So that's also something that you should be clear about, whether you want to pursue a more applied career or a more fundamental research career. And the other thing I think is that you should have a group of people that you are very comfortable around. So you should have some close contacts that best also are in science, maybe in the same group, maybe in another group, but that you can talk about and that also know about the special work dynamics that you have in science, because they are very different from a lot of other fields, and they can put a lot of pressure on you. It's very, very common in a PhD to have an imposter syndrome, that you think like, okay, I don't understand anything what I'm doing here, but also in general about the rate of PhD students having anxiety or depression is really, really high. So I think it's super important that you have people that you can share these feelings and that you can talk about, that you trust, that also know this systems. And it's perfect if they are in your group, because then they can help you with even concrete problems. But if not, you should at least have them in your surroundings, maybe some friends with whom you studied, or so make sure your personal contacts are also good and healthy.
Right. So basically, have a support system. That's very, very important, be it in your own group or have a mixed bag of support system who can help you with different issues that you might come across. So yeah, that's very sound advice. I mean, you said you haven't even finished your PhD, but considering that, you have a lot of very good advice. And finishing a PhD is just one of the parameters of claiming to have wisdom, just so you know. It's more than that. It's just on paper. So excellent. So it sounds to me that so far your research experience has been wonderful, and I hope it will continue to be wonderful in the future as well. However, if you have 3 wishes to improve your research experience, what would you ask for? And I'm not promising anything here, okay?
Yeah, that last part is the sad part.
That's the trick.
It would have been nice to just say, okay, 1, 2, 3, and then
Maybe, who
nah,
knows?
yes, I mean, there's basically with my research, I'm very happy, but what I would like to change, if it's possible in science, is basically, well, 2 of my wishes would be related. It's basically a 4-day work week and a stable perspective to become a scientist. And these are in the current system a lot at clash, because we have a system that evaluates you not based on how good you are, but on how good you are compared to others. It just evaluates how many papers you have and then puts it to the person next to you, asking how many papers they have. So there's never the point that you can say, okay, this is good enough, because you never know if it's good enough to reach a position. There might always come someone that has more publications than you, that has better whatever metric, and you never know. So if you want to pursue a scientific career, you basically feel this constant pressure of you don't know if it's enough what you did, and you feel like you would always have to do more, work more, come in on the weekends, work late, write that extra paper, go to that extra conference, and this is a lot of pressure, and I don't think it actually is beneficial on the long run. because I think it grabs away this opportunity to have a little bit an eye open to see what's left and right of your research. But you become very focused on, okay, let's do this tiny project here to have another publication to put in the list, and you might miss the big creative thing that might be lying there if you had the time to read a book or to read research papers from outside of your field. But with the current dynamics, you hardly have time for that because you need to spend so much time doing your own very focused research that I feel like there you are lacking out. And to me, this is a very sad thing because I think many scientists are very, very curious people, and that they would actually love to learn more, and not only about their field, but to learn from so many different things. And I have the hope that this could actually be beneficial to science in the sense that it's a creative process, and for a creative process you need external input, and if you strip away all of this, then at some point you are just out of ideas and you just make these tiny little steps, and that would become very boring. And yeah, then having basically a 4-day work week goes in the same direction, that you have some time to do it. But then I see that it's very difficult to implement because basically, as a scientist, I'm competing about very few jobs against anyone in the world. So if you would want to induce a 4-day work week and you only do it, let's say here in Spain where I do my PhD, then probably I would end up working anyways 5 days a week, because I would think, okay, but after finishing my PhD, I want to compete with people that did the 5-day work week. So it's very, very tricky to implement.
Right. It has to be universal. It has to be uniform. Same conditions, 4-day weeks. But
Yes.
isn't that what is happening right now anyways? I mean, there are parts of the world where they do more than 5 work days a week. They do 6 or 7, either legally or illegally. That is already happening. So I feel like there has to be someone who has to put the foot down and start. Be like, okay, no, also for scientists, we are doing 4 days a week, and then other regions or other countries or the labs will follow, hopefully.
Yeah, probably that would be the way to go. And yes, this global inequalities are always very difficult to tackle, and that would actually concern my my third wish that I had still free, and that would be that there would be implemented a global climate and research policy that does not leave me terrified every time I think about the future in 20 or more years, and that is actually in agreement with scientifically sustainable life, and yeah, so not destroying the planet on a human timescale.
That would be really nice, not destroying the planet. That would be, if we can do that, if we can avoid destroying the planet, that would be amazing.
Yes.
If only people or politicians listen to scientists and act on it, not just listen, but also act on it and make changes accordingly. Well, all 3 wishes of yours, very, very important, very, very important points you raised. And I hope that we are at least, we don't have it right now. We don't have it today. We won't have all 3 wishes of yours coming true tomorrow, but hopefully soon in the future, in the near future, that happens. And I hope we are working towards that brighter future. And I mean, if we have active researchers like you, active scientists who are thinking about these things, who are mindful of these things, then it's already a good start.
Yes.
So yeah, that's really important as I mentioned. Well, Niklas, it has been amazing speaking with you. But before I let you go, one last thing that I want to talk to you or hear your thoughts about is the challenging times that started in 2020 and seem to be going on to a certain extent in 2021, which is the pandemic, of course, I'm talking about. So, what are your learnings from these challenging times that we are living in?
Well, one thing obviously that mental health is something to take good care of, and that it was a lot of underrated. But also 2020, although very ambivalent, left me with some hope, especially regarding my three wishes. Because what we are seeing in 2020 is if the threat becomes large enough, we are able to change as a society on a large scale very quickly our habits. And although now the threat eased a lot and we're falling back a lot into the old habits, it did show us that all these arguments of, but you can never change. Yes, you can. We did. And this is something very promising. You just have to give a good reason, and hopefully the next time it will be in a positive way, that you don't isolate more between people, but that you create a more empathetic world and a world where the people are in general more happy and have time. And something that I experienced here in San Sebastian in Donosti during the lockdown is on a few times I was allowed to come to the lab to check things. Something that's beautiful is a carless city. It's just so much nicer when you can ride along the sunshine and hear the birds chirping and smell the flowers, smell the fresh cut grass, than driving through traffic and hear cars and smell exhaust pipes. That's just disgusting.
Fair enough. No, you're absolutely right. If the threat becomes threatening enough, we have proof that the society can change, we can adapt, and that is a positive learning, definitely. Well, this has been wonderful, Niklas. Thank you very much for speaking with us, and looking
Thanks for
forward to
inviting
having
me.
you.
I had a great time.
Excellent, excellent. Then looking forward to having you on Real Scientist Nano Twitter account. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. To know more about us, please visit our website realscientistsnano.org and follow us on Twitter at realsci_nano.